Today we're going to talk about VSI Cloud. My name is Jacqueline Tressler. I'm a Senior Account Manager at VMS Software in the Boston office. I manage our North America customers, trying to learn more about their business cases, how they're using OpenVMS, and talking to them about x86 and now the cloud. Rafael?
Hi, I'm Rafael. I'm Chief Systems Officer, particularly in the area of professional services and managed services. And I manage a team of 10 people. We are distributed around the world. And we have guys in the US, guys in Europe. And yeah, we basically work with all sorts of custom deployments when it comes to custom deployments for customers. Basically, we try to set up systems in different ways, different areas, and in all sorts of shapes and forms that fit a particular. That's
So this is our agenda for today. So we'll walk with you. So introduction, we're just going to talk a little bit about the history of OpenVMS, VMS software, why to move to the cloud. Rafael is going to go deeper into technical overview, hybrid cloud, and also technical overview for cloud only. We'll walk through the cloud checklist together, VSI cloud offerings. Rafael has some cases he'd like to discuss with you. Future technical goals, and we will, of course, leave some time for Q&A. So this is our mission statement. If you were in the beginning sessions, Daria also had this up on the screen. It's really important to us. So by linking the past to the future, we help OpenVMS users to protect and realize the full value of their applications. So for us in today in cloud, this is our journey. You can come with us on that journey, and we're here to educate you. And through the presentation, we just want to remind you this is an option. It's not a mandate. So a little bit about OpenVMS, the evolution, and VMS software. So OpenVMS was developed for proprietary hardware and now cloud innovation. Since VMS software was founded in 2014, we've been dedicated to enhancing OpenVMS and offering more to our customers. Our journey includes adding open source products, porting to x86, which hopefully some of you in this audience are on x86, or at least have an evaluation. If not, please talk to me. We're continuing to heavily invest in our R&D and also our support org. That's really important to us and really the foundation of our company. Expanding offerings with professional managed services, training, and more. So we have a whole professional services team, which we'll get to later in this presentation, but definitely a focus of ours as well. Cloud is the natural stepping stone in our journey to protect and yours. And we always want to say that we're here to say, and this is our focus, OpenVMS. All right, I wanted to add a fun slide. So maybe some of you know Vernon the Shark. Can you raise your hand? Have you seen it before? Okay. So this is the unofficial logo of OpenVMS, VMS software. So what do sharks and OpenVMS have in common? They both have been around forever. They are extremely flexible and fast. They never stop. They operate in clusters. And although they will never be cute, you might not agree with me, they are most efficient and effective machines in their environments. All right, so let's talk a little bit about why we should move to the cloud. And we have the option to do that. So financial reasons. So overall, your cost of ownership will be lower. Additionally, you don't have to invest in hardware. Simplify your operations. It's a one-stop shop, one contract, and it's fast and hassle-free provisioning. Strategic, you have global reach instantly. Technical, you can enhance your security and scale your environment. And then human capital, you decide where you want your IT resources to sit and let us do the rest. All right, and here we wanted to dedicate a whole slide to providing you with a choice. Again, this is not a mandate. So we want to empower our customers to choose the path that best fits them. We are here to educate and support what's best for your organization. We want to tell you a story and you make the choice. Cloud is an option, not a mandate.
So it's available by cost, by usage, or size store there.
We can go through that more in Q&A if you don't mind.
All right, before we move on, I think it's very important that we talk about three different terms that it's going to come up quite frequently in this presentation, also whenever we mention cloud. So the first term is what we call nested deployment. Nested deployment is the deployment we have been able to do, and it was the only type of deployment that we hadn't been able to do in the cloud virtualized environment until about May, June this year. And what this deployment involves is a L0 operating system, which is in this case controlled by our backbone provider, which is VSI, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. And that L0, to the best of our knowledge, is either Red Hat Linux or Oracle Linux. We cannot know, of course, because it's one of those philosophical questions. Are you really in a simulation or not? How would you even know? In this case, the L0 would be the simulation that we do not have control. On top of that L0, we would then go and install Oracle Linux 9, it could have been Oracle Linux 10, it could have been Red Hat. Those are the two supported systems as per Camille's on page. And that would then have a KVM, and within the KVM, we would have one VMS node. Of course, we could have more nodes, but we usually recommend not having more than one guest per host, because if the host goes down, you lose two guests in your core, and that would generally not be enough. So this is what we have always been doing. But since May this year, breaking news, we actually managed to do cloud native. And the difference here is that we no longer rely on the secondary operating system with the hypervisor. Now, VMS node, the guest, is installed directly on the first operating system, which is managed by OCI. So as you can see, there are major advantages that, first of all, it simplifies a lot all the diagrams and all presentations. It makes it easier for people to maintain, etc. And I'll talk about some of those advantages. And just for the sake of completeness, we also have a third option, which is the cloud physical server. And this one is likely the easiest one for all of us to understand, because it's very simple to own your own server and deploy it on a data center. The difference is that the server is not really owned by you. Consider it as if you were leasing the server on a monthly basis, where in Oracle would be on a daily basis. And the server is, of course, not within your premise, and you do not have physical access. Other than that, it looks exactly the same as if it was a server in your own. So we'll not be talking about this option during the presentation, but it's there just so everyone is aware that this is all basically using the cloud. The disadvantage of this is that this does not come with vMotion by default. So when you rent one server, this is actually what you get. You get one server. So if you'd like vMotion, by definition, you would have to have at least two servers. On the other hand, both the nested and the cloud native, they come with vMotion capabilities. So even if you have a single slice of the given original physical server, that physical server is in a cluster with other physical servers, so that if that goes down in a predictable manner, vMotion will kick in and you are actually safe. So even if you rent just a single slice, do not have two nodes, do not have anything redundant, you still have vMotion. And last but not least, we want to make it very clear that none of this is direct bare metal deployment, using this one here. The idea is that there is always a hypervisor. The question is, how many hypervisors? Is it one? Is it two? And where the hypervisor lies? Is it within your domain of responsibility, which is too explicated, or is it within the domain of responsibility of our cloud provider, in this case, OCI, which is the advantage? So there is always a hypervisor. The question is where and how many there are. So if in doubt, from all those three options, the recommendation, you take the middle one, you go native. Why is that? First of all, it's their KVM. What do we mean by this? It's Oracle's responsibility to manage the KVM. You then access via a web interface. You access via a web interface, and it's very simple to configure. The guys had a very interesting slide when they were presenting all the very deep down details about this implementation. And their argument was that if you are the person who likes to configure every single tiny dot in the XML, maybe this solution might not be for you. Maybe if you have an application where you need to extract the last 0.1% of performance out of your KVM, maybe this is not for you. On the other hand, if you're the person that you just want to take care of VMS and just wish that everything would just run as everything has always run in I10, this is the perfect use case. Why? Because all the configurations that you need for KVM, which are outside the VMS scope, they're very easy to change, they're very easy to understand. It's a click and drag and drop, slide bars, this type of stuff on a web browser. So you do not have to edit XML, so you do not have to understand bash commands in Linux. It's very straightforward. There are 3 ways of doing it. I'll not go into the details, particularly because the guy's presentation has been recorded. And in there, they talk about transplanting a QCOW, which is one of the easy ways, installing via netboot and netboot via IPs. So there, the guys talk about even to the exact steps that you need to do to perform this. So either watch the presentation or hire managed services hours. We are here to help you with all this type of stuff. And a few other things to mention is that on 9.2.3, update 2 included, up to update 2, we are supporting only one disk. On the other hand, 9.2.3 update 3, which will come out in January, February, we're now supporting more than one disk in VSI. And this has been fully tested. It's patched and has been fully tested. We have the drivers. We are basically running all our clusters now with the patch driver. So it's just something that you are aware. If you want to go for the solution, you need more than one disk, just contact us. I'm pretty sure we can just give you the specific driver that needs the update. And you can run very happily with more than one. Obviously, when I say more than one disk, it's system disk plus other disks. So the 9.2.3 up to update 2 only has the system. Yeah, and like I said, there is no host to manage. There is nothing to patch on the host side. There is nothing to upkeep. There is no need for you to take a course on the SX side. There is no need for you to learn bash scripting. There is no need for you to understand Red Hat Linux. Everything comes for free because it is there. You also get for free the live migration because it is a virtualized environment and the cloud itself provides a live migration, even if you have a single node, a single hypervisor. And particularly interesting is that the fact it is their KVM, so maybe I go back a little bit here. The fact that there is not a red box here, it means that we no longer need to dedicate at least one CPU core, and we no longer need to dedicate some amount of RAM, and we no longer need to dedicate also, let's say, at least 50 gigabytes of hard disk to run the Linux operating system. So there are some advantages when it comes to the usage of the resources. So all the resources are now dedicated to your VMS guest. And another thing to consider is higher performance. And the higher performance is not only from the fact that you're removing a layer, which according to players' tests would give a roughly order of magnitude of 3 to 10% improvement performance. So it's not only the fact of the removal of one layer, but it's also the fact that all the costs of the processing, of the computing processing that you need from the host is no longer on your account. The fact that we are running without our own host, and the host is managed by OCI, all the cost of that computation is actually on OCI's own. So if there is anything you can offload from your guest into the host, do it, because now you basically come under host for free, not being charged for those computational power required. And basically, as Confucius said in 500 BCE, life is too short to worry about your host OS, and money is too short for you to pay a hypervisor license. So this is our pitch on why the native cloud is so interesting. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to pay. Right. Just a little bit of what. Now we'll talk a little bit different topic. So It's not so much the advantage of one type or the other, but how do you actually get there? The most common case is you do have already a VMS cluster. In this example, we have only two, and they're connected by a local network. Of course, when I say local network here, it could have been a VPN, but let's just assume it is a real hardware local network, cable style thing. The first thing we do is we analyze our system and we try to estimate the load that the server will have, and by definition, what sort of parameters we should start the virtualized server in the cloud. Just so we start with something that will likely already fit 80% of your needs. Once that is established, we install, of course, the VMS node. We certify that everything that Bluetooth is working fine. Then we create a WireGuard tunnel. When we write WireGuard here, it could have been also like this stack. There is no preference for one or the other. Next step, we connect the cloud node into your local network. And we check that indeed they have formed the cluster. So now the new node has joined your originally two node cluster, and now you have a three node. What is the advantage of this? The advantage is that the move to the cloud does not require you to shut down any system. It does not require you to have any downtime if you're already existing cluster. And particularly also by joining them and not assigning necessarily at the beginning votes, doesn't affect your operations in any way, shape, or form. So this new member is indeed part of the cluster, but if it wasn't, there wouldn't have been any difference. You could just drop any minute and you wouldn't have even noticed. So this is one of the key aspects of the lean migration to the cloud, that we can provide you with an easy way that does not affect your current operations. Next thing is, if you need a second node, we will add a second node. Check your words okay, connect to the WireGuard, verify everything. One other thing I'd like to point out is that the first node here, just as an example, we added in Chicago, the second node we added in Frankfurt. And we have tried already these geographically dispersed clusters with many different countries, with many different regions, and it works perfectly fine. Of course, the moment you start to add further away data centers, you do increase latency, so it's something to keep in mind. It's all of the trade-off between the latency versus the geographic resilience that you can actually get from the cloud. OCI right now has data centers obviously in every single continent, and many of the continents, many of the countries, you can even select different cities that you can put your data to the cloud. Right, so this could be an end in its own meaning. What do I mean by this? Maybe your current Itanium cluster is running some sort of custom software that you no longer have access to the source. So you might be stuck in Itanium for that reason. But you still want some of the advantages of the cloud. Maybe you want to use the clouds as a backup node. Maybe you want to use the cloud as a way to store the data of the customers in different regions. For example, if you're following GDPR or any other sort of compliance rules. Right? So in that case, all your European customers could have the data stored in Frankfurt, all your American customers could have data stored in Chicago. Very easy to achieve the cloud, and it's perfectly fine to run a hybrid architecture cluster. So we can mix and match Alpha Itaniums and x86 in the cloud or premise, you name it. We also have, just as a side note here, we also have nodes, Alpha nodes in the cloud. So basically APT-wire-based nodes. So when I say mix and match, it's really mix and match. Just tell us what you need. The only thing we cannot do is maintain in the cloud for obvious reasons, right? So Itanium still has to be on-prem or on the external base. So that will be an end on its own. But let's say you do have the source code and your objective is to move fully to x86, move fully to the cloud. We start from that point where you're now 4-node cluster, it's fully happy, it's running, everything's fine. And then we can slowly shut down your local nodes. So this is the definition that we call of a lean full migration to the cloud. We have everything working, we have everything set up. Everything was done in production. As you noted here, there is no development machine, no test machine. It's done in production one at a time. And we go and we slowly shut down, verify that pulling out the plug of your regional Itanium node still doesn't produce any side effects in the cluster. And we keep doing until basically you can shut down all your systems. And of course, we will remove that work, and this will be running just as fine, right? Because now your 2 cloud nodes have replaced the 2 local nodes. You can leave it as that, but for increased performance, you can also change slightly the networking style. It's something that the guys talk about the conversation about. But I just want to make sure that this is not the only option. So if you are okay with running a hybrid, which there is also perfect. All right, so I already touched upon a lot of these things. So the lean transition is basically the idea that you do not have to shut down, do not have any downtime on your production cluster. You can move to the cloud without the worry. If something goes wrong, you can always roll back. So it's very simple in the previous examples to actually remove the new node in the cloud and go back to what you had. So there is always this ability of just Control Z, any sort of step you take. You have risk control because by definition, we are making before breaking. We are always adding a node before removing. And it's particularly important in terms of load balancing and the necessity of having this. It's an iterative process because once we add the first node, the previous example in Chicago, a lot of the lessons we have learned from that, all the tuning, the performance that is needed, we apply those to the second node, Frank, that example. So, of course, the more nodes in the cloud that you actually need to support your cluster or to integrate your current cluster, the faster there will be quite big points of scale. We have seen this quite a lot in a lot of the clusters we have done, where we increase the number of members, and the first step is always the hardest. Once you have one, the second goes much faster. And it's your choice if the objective is to stay in a local environment plus cloud hybrid, or if there is a stepping stone to a objective where everything goes in cloud. So as Jackie was saying, the cloud itself is a choice. For us, it's also a choice on how you want to use the cloud. So once you have made the decision of using the cloud, talk to us. We can help you to design your system to better fit your needs. If the objective is full cloud, or if the objective is to keep some of the nodes on premise. For the sake of completeness, we also like to present here one of our first clusters, where we call this the triangle cluster, and we have 2 nodes in Chicago, 2 nodes in Frankfurt, and we have a multi-node. So this is a core node in London, which is running 2 core CPU, 3 GB and 4 GB of RAM, something like 20, 50 GB. So a super small node in London. And the reason why we chose London is just because it's geographically in between Chicago and Frankfurt. So from a latency perspective, this cluster makes a lot of sense that your core node is in between the 2. It's just one example of what we have achieved. So you guys have an idea that now we have a cluster where any of these lines on the train can be broken down. And because of the way the cluster is formed with equal volume, you still have quorum to maintain the cluster. The fact that you have 2 nodes in Frankfurt, 2 nodes in Chicago means that one of the lines going down, you still all of them have quorum to on the cluster level. The guys have used this particular example multiple times to actually understand how the voting mechanism of the quorum information, maintaining the quorum works when we are talking about. So in this example, we have destroyed some of the vertices of the triangle. So we basically brought down the encryption of the networks. Therefore, there was no more connection to the other nodes. The cluster is still happy and fine. We have brought down the lines. So basically, we brought down the network connection to the cluster is fine. We have brought down single nodes. We have brought down dual nodes. We have brought down crossed nodes. So basically, one node down Frankfurt, one node down Chicago. By the way, when I say brought down, manually brought down, intentionally brought down, just so we would check how does the cluster behave, and also what sort of timings are we talking about? Does it take 10 minutes to find itself again? Does it take 5 minutes to rejoin if we bring back one of the members? What is the latest to talk about? So all of this we have tested, and this was part of our quality assurance before we could actually bring this on. Right, so cloud-only characteristics. Let's say your objective is to move fully to the cloud. So you want to pull the plug on any of the Athenes or x86 you have now. What are some of the advantages you have there? The geographical region where your deployment is fully your choice. As I mentioned before, we have data centers in many areas of the world, and you can decide based on your objectives. It could be compliance, it could be from a technical reason that you just want your nodes closer to the end user point. And the advantage we have in the cloud is when you are moving nodes, you are virtually moving the nodes. You do not need to hire a truck and actually move a server rack. You actually just press a button, and OCI is really good at this to just copy the current hard disk and the configuration of your instance from one of their data centers to another data center who can reside in a completely different continent. Of course, that copy in particular is not lean, is not, it takes a while because you're moving the data across, but we are talking about minutes, we're not talking about days of shuffling a server around. The other interesting thing is that cloud in general, they provide hardware tuning, and in cloud we have two terms to bring here, which is vertical scaling and horizontal scaling. Horizontal scaling is the idea that you add nodes, you add more computation power by creating more nodes. So that is very obvious, even on a local environment, that you can just add one extra node to your VMS cluster. When the end of the month comes, and let's say your client is a banking system that needs more processing power. Very simple to understand. But the cloud also allows something that the physical servers on-prem or not do not allow, and that is vertical tuning. Vertical tuning basically means that you can drag, and it's literally a web page slider, and adjust how much RAM you have on a given system. You can adjust how much hard disk you have on a given system. So all those settings that we are generally familiar with in KVM, number of CPUs, RAM, hard disk, you can change those in the cloud seamlessly, instantaneously. In your KVM, when you're running locally in your machine, of course, you still have the limitation of your local hardware. So you can only slide your bar, you can only adjust up to what your hardware can provide. In the cloud, however, it's also up to what their hardware can provide. But their hardware, we're generally talking about 500 cores, 4 terabytes of RAM, petabytes of data. So the ability that you have of vertical scaling on the go, it's actually very interesting. Once again, a good example would be a banking client where end of the month, they just pump up all the RAM they can, add more CPU cores, and then the 5th of the next month comes in. They have processed all the payments, they have processed all the salaries, deposits, it just ran up. So this vertical scalability should be seen not from a static perspective, but actually from a very dynamic perspective as another way to better handle your loads. So this way, you are actually always on the most optimal hardware infrastructure to solve your problem. You don't need to dimension your server always towards the worst case scenario throughout the year. You're actually going to dimension your server to the average case, and then you're going to increase as the need. Create nodes quickly, so that's basically the horizontal scaling. And the interesting thing is that the moment you are in the cloud, you actually have a 24/7 team of people from the back end provider that are monitoring the servers. And a good example is the fact that you get free demotion. So that's all on there too. It's no longer your responsibility to take care of any of these. You no longer need to hire a hardware maintenance specialist. You no longer need to hire people that will do preventive maintenance when your smart hard disk has detected some stuff. So all of this comes for free for being. Right. So what are the type of things we usually ask you as a customer when you come to us and talk? I want cloud. This is great. So, but what do I need to do that? So first questions, have you started a port exercise? It's not a mandatory, it's not a sine qua non. This is one of the questions we ask because the cloud can be used not only for production environments, but it can also be used for development. So one of the main conclusions we had from the Malmo Bootcamp was the number of developers that talked to us and asked for a cloud solution that was not permanent. They asked for us for a cloud solution that they could actually pay by the hour or by the day. And their interest was exactly so they would spin something up as the need came, then shut down once their tests were done. So there is also a possibility. So when you say everything about cloud in the presentation is very focused on production server, on moving to the cloud lean way, that you do not have downtime. Don't forget that even if you have not started the port x86, cloud can be a very good solution for your own developers to port the application, to test the x86 environment without you having to go and make a huge investment on the hardware, on the servers. You do not have to go and spend all those tens of thousands of dollars on an HP generation 11 with 5 channel adapters, all those type of things, to realize later on that in fact one of the libraries of your product you no longer have to solve. So the cloud is a really good idea also for your development. Right, so a few other things, latency and specific hardware. Is there a very specific reason why you need the fiber channel, or is it just because of the performance? Is it just the megabytes per second that matter, or perhaps your IT manager has to share the disk with some other instance, and it's according to the IT regulations or something like that. So talk to us if you have a specific reason, because if the reason is only the performance, once again, it's very easy to slide the by VSI, and we can actually give you similar performance fiber channel just by paying a little bit more to get the highest speed packets. On the other hand, if you do have extremely tight requirements in latency, let's say your node has to sit within a few kilometers of a production plant because the reaction time of your node determines the reaction time of a SCADA system or a PLC. Then cloud might not necessarily be the best solution for that specific node that resides at the edge. And it would be instead a very good solution for a central node processing the requests, etc., but not the one collecting all the edge sensors or things like that. So something to consider as you talk to us, we're going to take that into account. And more important than that, because we have tried so many clusters, by now I think we have tried about 20 plus different styles of clusters, all sorts of mix and match between architectures. We do have quite a number of tables with the latencies we have measured on cluster information, on processing of time, ping between the clusters. So all this type of information from a statistical perspective on how well it does or not, we have those values. So talk to us, what are your requirements? Then the third thing, which is one of the killer offers for the cloud, what are your geographical requirements, particularly from a compliance perspective? Do you need to put a server in a specific country? Do you need to put servers in separate countries which are minimum X kilometers apart? So one of the examples is the old IBM manual that servers have to be minimum 200 kilometers apart. In case of electromagnetic burst, would not damage your whole infrastructure. So we will always have a distance. So this is very easy to achieve in the cloud. Talk to us if there is vulnerability. The next question is which hypervisor. So the cloud does not care too much about hypervisor. You can go and you can install ESXi, you can go and install KVM, but tell us if it is your intention to actually change the hypervisor, because even though the cloud doesn't care about it, it's a very good time to stop and clean the house a little bit. As you're moving the nodes to the cloud, even if you do lean, let's stop and rethink and do the right way for it. So do talk to us if the change of hypervisors are of the roadmaps, particularly with some new cost requirements for one of the hypervisor program. The name is and final, last but not least, is the fact that you get free demotion, or in KVM terms, live migration is pretty much the same thing. If that is a concern, if that is a requirement for you, but you actually have, let's say, a very, very simple cluster, one node, two nodes, talk to us, because the cloud is then, once again, a very killer offer from the fact that you get that for free, even if you have only a tiny slice in the backbones.
Great, let's talk about VSI cloud offerings. We want to make sure that we offer you flexibility, also choice. So we'll go through this from left to right, and minimum involvement from VSI side to max involvement. So basic setup. So we would manage the OCI settings for you. We would boot the host and pretty much the sequence. Infrastructure monitoring. So VMS would install monitoring tools for you and just make sure everything's going as meant. Then if anything does happen, you would receive alerts. And you also get reports on that as well. Infrastructure management. So this is where VMS would actively manage your infrastructure, making sure that everything is optimized and there is some stability there, and also tuning. Now we're getting into system management. So VMS is going to oversee your performance and uptime and also the security. And we would also be sending you monthly reports and talking to. And last but not least, this is the maps. So hands off, customer, and application management. So we would be running your applications OpenVMS in the cloud. Let's now talk about the cloud journey. So we want to hear from you, especially the account management team. So please don't be strangers if you haven't spoken to us. But a lot of you do look familiar, so that's a good sign. But we want to hear your business case, and we want to hear if there's any blockers, but we really need to start with this conversation. Discovery service. So this is a simple exercise with VSI $ support file. It will help us to understand your environment better and start to have that technical discussion with the professional services team. Then we move on to pre-study. We want to access your environment and really have an understanding of what's going on in there so we can give you the best advice for moving forward. Here's the concept. This is showing that your application can actually work. Deploy. You're going to evaluate, you're going to test, you're going to make sure that everything is working as planned before you actually move to production, which is run. And this is when you would be fully in the cloud and running production. Project is complete.
Yeah, I'll talk briefly about some of the cases we have for the cloud. We have one interesting customer is CDL. They are a insurance broker, okay, and they have actually been our first customer in the cloud. What they are running is a single node with multiple network connections to data broker. So this was an interesting example where the network setup and speed and latency made a huge difference. On the other hand, their processing needs are relatively stable, so we do not have so much of the necessity of a vertical scale and horizontal scaling we have seen in other use cases. But nonetheless, it's very interesting because they basically moved from a concept of team on premise, so they had servers, to a node in the cloud where because of the necessities, the technical necessities, the hardware needs for their application was not that stringent. The cost savings we're talking about were more than 2 orders of magnitude. So for them, it was a very interesting project, exactly to move to the cloud for the sake of using it as means to shut down their local server and therefore save quite a lot. We have a second example, and this one is something we actually did ourselves, but we do not recommend at all to customers. So please try not to hear so much what I'm going to say now. And the idea is that we had what we call a herder. And this is a nested deployment. So point one that we do not recommend so much. And not only is it a nested deployment, but it's actually a host with more than 60 VMS guests. And you may be asking, okay, that doesn't sound very good. Why would you have 60 guests in the same host? And the reason is that we are using this host to generate automatic VMS installations. So we have an internal TankWorks project. It's part of the hackathon. And right now we are able to install VMS full hands-off. So there is not a single user intervention in about 15 minutes. And we're also able to pass on to that installation the licenses that a given customer has purchased. And not only that, but also some of the kits. And the kits is actually where we're a little bit stuck right now because we're able to do all kits that do not require answering of prompts and questions. And we are not yet there to the other kits which do require prompts and questions. So the project is something interesting. We're looking forward. We are already using it internally, but we're looking forward to open it up to the public once we do have more time to invest in this. And the idea here is that we also have a caching tree for all the installations we have today. So let's say, as an example, we take 923 vanilla and we passed on the request to install on vanilla. I give it this PIP version and I give it SSH and I give it a patch. That image is stored as a theme provision, which is also something we do not recommend. So it's one of those classic examples of do as I say and not as I do. But it's stored as a theme provision image and it is cached. And the reason there is theme provision, it makes it a lot easier for us to cache because then we have very small usage of hard disk. Next time a customer requests the same 3 kits to be installed plus 1, we're no longer going to do it from the very start. So it is no longer going to take 15 minutes. Instead, we are unarchiving this image from our tree, generating a copy, and just installing the kits there. So this is a very interesting project to be done in the cloud, particularly because it's so easy for us to vertically scale the performance of the system. So when we are running this full-time, full blast, almost brute forcing many of the three branches of all the combinations during the hackathon, we actually had about 180 or 200 cores, 500 gigabytes of RAM. And then once the hackathon is finished, we generate a lot of the tree. Now this further is back to 4 cores and possibly almost nothing. So it's a very good example of why the vertical scalability is so important. Then we have the triangle cluster, which is very interesting cluster where you can try all sorts of technologies related to the information of the clustering mechanism. So I talk a lot about things that can go wrong that we have checked already. But one other thing to mention is we have used this triangle cluster to test also the encryption methodologies for the IPCI cluster protocol. So we have used the WireGuard and IPsec, and this was one of our test beds. And we have also a lot of different hybrid clusters. So this is basically a catch of examples where we have, for instance, a alpha node in cloud connected to our local network via a VPN, and the license of the alpha node is on our server in the local network, and they are forming a cluster also with some of our Itaniums in our local network. This is an example that is currently being used by QA, how to check alpha in cloud. We have many other examples of also Itanium to x86 in cloud. We have examples of all sorts of things. So just to say that hybrid, when you say hybrid, it's not only hybrid on-prem and cloud, it's hybrid architectures, plural, because we can also have alpha, Itanium, and x86. This is probably one of the more interesting slides because we talk a lot about the cloud not being a mandate, it's an option. And we talk about us coming here and presenting solutions, but bootcamps are always interesting because it's one of the best times to hear how you guys are thinking of using the cloud. As I gave the example now, we heard for the first time that this would be a really good solution for developers, particularly if we had the short time periods for the nodes. And there are a few things here that we still want to do. So we want to do templates and applies. So that's where the code comes in. The idea would be that you just select the products you want, we install for you, you're ready to go. You can have pay as you go. That's what we heard from the memo feedback. You can have automatic custom installation. So Camille was the one referring that there used to be a service called HP Golden Master. So it's as close to that as you would be able to do for your next now. Cloud native, that has actually been achieved. So this presentation is a little bit related to what we presented now. And IPsec, because back then, I believe by February or March, we were not able to do IPsec yet. We were only able to do WireGuard now. And the last one here is maybe one of the interesting aspects of this talk was I want to hear your needs. We had a call with a given customer 2 weeks ago about the cloud, and their idea was to support the whole Itanium to cloud. And once again, we went and we discussed this lean migration, et cetera, et cetera. And as we were talking about the lean migration, they realized that the cloud for them is not necessarily just the need for porting to x86. It might be just also a better way to keep running their current Itanium before they do the port. What do they mean by this? They were having problems with maintaining the hardware of their tape backup. They said it was becoming increasingly hard to find spare parts and maintain the whole database of tapes, etc. And the idea that came from that is you can have your Itanium cluster exactly as it was, but add a single node to your cluster which does not have open. Basically does not change your port, and use that node as a backup. So idea would be that instead of backing up your current Itanium setup to tape drives that have actually failed, back up to the cloud instead. And to make the idea even better, you can have different backup nodes. You can have backup nodes in different geographical regions. So now you also have the guarantee of the distance between the nodes that have your data. When I talk about this after one of the questions we had during the guys' presentation, James Preciado actually had an even better idea. He was saying, why not add nodes to the safe set, enable the, it's called bit view. When you have the safe sets and you have the bit, basically that register where it was changed. Yeah, exactly. So the idea was you would enable the bit fields to mark on all the nodes which are connected with the original Itanium nodes. You would mark them, and then you would actually drop the cloud node from your safe set throughout the day. Then the night would come in when you have less load. You would then push back your cloud node into the safe set, and because you have all the bits enabled, you would then do a mini merge. So the idea
you talked about shadow. The shadow set.
Shadow set. So the idea is that you do not have to actually use the cloud node just as backup destination. You can actually use as part of the shadow set that automatically does all the sort of backup during the night, right? So the two options are possible. But James' idea was actually very interesting because it's even more seamless integration with your already current setup. So once again, it's just to give you an idea, another example that we are here to hear you guys. What are the other ways to use this product? We are making basically a framework. We are making tools to install to make it easier to use VMS in the cloud. But you guys know much better the use cases. And it could be a corner use case. We're still reading it here. It could be a use case that will adapt to everyone's need, as this example of the backup of your current identities. So please reach out, even if you do not have a specific customer you'll be interested, but you just have this sort of brainstorming idea. We're very, very, very happy. So yeah,
Hey, meet our professional services team. If you're on the professional service team, in this room, can you just raise your hand? Awesome. So yeah, take a look around. There's many of them in this room. And this is an awesome group of people that are very passionate about OpenVMS. Some of them are younger than others, and they've really come up to speed and are just great to work with. They are here for anything related to migrations, security upgrades, to 2L3, for instance, anything that might not be covered under our standard support, just reach out, and we're happy to help.
Is it just coincidental that you put the old and the new like on that side?
I did not make this slide. I did not make this slide. I'm just talking about it.
Maybe it's
No.
it's respect to seniority.
Where are your horns?
Good back. All right. So lastly, I just want to make sure you can get in touch. My contact information is here. Don't be a stranger. Would love to hear from you. Even if you're just starting to have the conversation with us, or at least a bit interested, we want to talk to you. Also, I provided a link to the cloud product page and white papers. There's also QR codes to each of those.
I'll just add one thing, particularly this bottom one, take a picture, is very interesting to show to your IT managers, to any other manager that may be a little bit resilient to, a little bit against the move to the cloud or the move to x86, because in this paper, we have a table where we present up to row M, the comparison of on-premise, different types of cloud and so on. And we try to be as unbiased as possible. So this paper was written by VSI people, but we had a lot of persons from the Terra Cloud team that work only with IT, and they have no knowledge of VMS, reviewing all the pros and cons of each solution. So this is a very interesting start point. If you want a very good overview, and as I said, as unbiased as you could do, but particularly if you want to show also to your managers and some of the stakeholders and decision makers on why should be the cloud for some solutions. And once again, in this paper, we even talk about last 3 or 4 rows at the table. We show what are the cases that the cloud does probably not fit your needs. So if you are in doubt, start with this paper. There is no ChatGPT written text there. It's all handmade, and that is nice because then we are more straight to the point. That is a good starting point if you need a little bit of a push for your decision makers.